Testing, testing.
Hey, Commissioner Sushman, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Keeping Teddy out of this room. So so hopefully you won't hear him at all. He's whining right now.
No, I think we'll be good. Thank you.
Okay. I'm gonna just put myself on mute.
Sounds good.
Let me turn the sound.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you, Amanda.
All right, we're good.
We can hear you.
Okay. Little technical difficulties connecting, sorry.
No problem. We're good. Okay, welcome to the Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for November 21, 2023. We have minutes from our meeting of November 8th, 2023 to be approved. Commissioner Sussman,
Aye.
Commissioner Barbay,
Aye.
Commissioner Richard,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Abstain.
okay, and I vote aye. Madam Secretary.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are 4 items on today's consent agenda. The first one is Midshore Regional Solid Waste Facility. Its application for certification as a renewable energy facility for the Maryland Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard Program. The second item is from River Oaks Energy, Inc. Its application for a license to supply gas or gas broker services in Maryland. The third item is Approved Energy 2 LLC. Its application for a license to supply electricity or electric broker services in Maryland. And item number 4 is from Approved Energy 2 LLC. Its application for a license to supply natural gas or gas broker services in Maryland.
Okay, regarding item 1, I move that we approve the application and issue a renewable energy facility ID certification number. That we direct the applicant to establish a REC account with PJM Gas within 30 days of the certification and file an on-site and behind-the-meter generation report with the Commission within 1 week of recording of each generation date with GATS, and then finally direct the applicant to notify the Commission within 30 days if the information on which the application was based has changed. Commissioner Sussman,
Aye.
Commissioner Barbay,
Aye.
Commissioner Richard,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
I vote aye. Regarding number 2, I move that we grant the company a license to operate as a natural gas supplier in Maryland, limited to broker services for the customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff, and direct the company to file notice with the Commission within 30 days if there's any changes to the information that was in the application. Commissioner Sussman,
Aye.
Commissioner Barbay,
Aye.
Commissioner Richard,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
I vote aye. Regarding item number 3, I move that we grant the company a license to operate as an electricity supplier in Maryland for the customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff. Direct the company to provide marketing materials specific to its Maryland operations to the Commission staff and to the Office of People's Counsel within 30 days prior to the utilization of the materials in Maryland, and then direct the company to file notice with the Commission for any changes in its application. Commissioner Sussman,
Aye.
Commissioner Barbay,
Aye.
Commissioner Richard,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
I vote aye. And item 4, I move that we grant the company a license to operate as a natural gas supplier in Maryland for the customers, classes, and service territories applied for and recommended by staff. Direct the company to provide marketing materials specific to its Maryland operations to the Commission staff and the Office of People's Counsel 30 days prior to the utilization of those materials in Maryland, and direct the company to file notice with the Commission within 30 days any changes in their application. Commissioner Sussman,
Aye.
Commissioner Barbay,
Aye.
Commissioner Richard,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
I vote aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item on the administrative agenda is from Distributed Solar Operations LLC. Its request for extension of Community Solar Pilot Program operational deadline for the Distributed Solar Operations Solar Project in Prince George's County, Maryland.
Good morning, Chair Hoover and Commissioners. Catherine Moriarty on behalf of technical staff. With me at the podium is also Drew McAuliffe, Director of Electricity Division. Distributed Solar Operations LLC asked the Commission to extend their operational deadline. In my pre-filed comments, I described the regulatory language that provides this body the legal authority to grant this extension. You will note this authority rests on a showing of good cause. After studying the facts, it is staff's opinion the company has satisfied this requirement. Therefore, staff recommends that the Commission grant the extension. We're available for questions. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Max Cook on behalf of Distributed Solar Operations, LLC. I also have with me Mrs. Jackie Bruce from the project company. We have reviewed staff's filing and have nothing further to add. With that, we're here to answer any questions from the Commission. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Barbe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So about the permitting delays and legal actions, could you just expand upon that for me, please?
Yes, Commissioner. So as a part of the local permitting process in Prince George's County, there was a dispute as far as tree conservation and what those requirements were. This resulted in about a year and a half of back and forth from the project company and the Maryland MNC PPC. Eventually that was decided and ruled in the project company's favor. But again, this was a year and a half, and as of last Friday, actually, the project companies finally received that necessary approval.
Okay, so, and that's what you're referring to when you say subsequent legal challenges?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner.
Okay. I'm curious, do you have other projects in Prince George's County?
The project company does not, to my knowledge. Do you have any project?
So we establish special purpose entities, so the project entity does not, but DSD has worked in Prince George's County, although I'm told primarily on rooftop projects. So this is one of our first ground mount projects,
see.
which would trigger that conservation easement and
Okay.
tree conservation plan.
So I presume that in this project some trees are being taken down and you were proposing to replant, or what exactly was going on here?
Actually, only one very small shaggy tree is being removed.
Ah.
However, the site itself is in a conservation easement and has a TCP on it, and our development required that TCP plan to be updated. And when we worked with MNCPP, hope I got the acronym
Park and
right.
planning.
Parks and Planning, we worked with them. They indicated we needed conservation bank credits in order to do the development. We went through a series of back and forths. We actually then began negotiations with banks, with conservation banks, to purchase those. And then we hired a third-party legal firm to discuss with Parks and Planning, and it was ultimately determined we were grandfathered in under the existing TCP since we aren't clearing any additional trees. So that was no longer required.
So is park and planning easy to work with or difficult to work with, would you say? Or would you not care to characterize it?
They're very responsive.
Okay.
But I think that there are some very strict parameters they work within, and we really needed to have the right representation to have those discussions. We needed experts on both sides to discuss the issues and get to the correct answer.
Okay. Year and a half delay because of one shaggy tree.
Yes.
I understand. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess I'm going to direct my question when I get to it to staff, but just to set the table for this question or line of questions. Back when we started doing some of this siting of some of this solar, the locals were ticked, right? They went through MACO, they put in legislation failed ultimately, but they wanted to usurp the Public Service Commission's ultimate siting authority and preemptive authority on siting because they didn't like where some of this stuff was going. Well, that was obviously diametrically opposed to carrying out state policy. And we always thought the law was clear on this, and it was, and the courts have upheld that recently in the last couple of years, up through the Court of Appeals. Now, I guess now the Supreme Court, I don't know, but through the Court of Appeals, that said, no, locals, you can't. But it occurs to me, some of these permitting items, although the locals it seems to me some of the locals who are slowing things down the most were some of the most vocal opponents of our preemptive siting authority at the commission. So I guess my question then becomes, having set that table, if you have questions on what the kind of, not really a hypothetical, but what, as my view of the world, kind of is on this. Some of the loudest objectors were some of these slow foot draggers. Is this a way for locals who are still ticked, to be honest, to slow the process down on siting? And if it is, then when will we know? How will we know? Who's evaluating that to say, hang on here, something's not right. Something's not right in Denmark. I got to figure this out. So, staff, can you start this conversation with me, please?
Well, I think that, if there's local permitting, that is part of, for example, the tree conservation study, that is part of the statute and a requirement for staff to look at and make sure we're compliant. Whether they're using these studies and permitting processes to delay the development of these projects, I really don't know what's in their minds.
I know you don't know the answer off the top of your head, Ms. Moriarty, but my question is not, do you know? My question is, when will we know that we need to take further action? And maybe it's technical staff, someone in management and technical staff who needs to answer this question. Who's looking at this? Who's kind of connecting the dots to see if we got, a picture of hand tossing sand in the proverbial gears? Anybody? How will we know when that, or if that's ever occurring, other than we just accept these delays, which are antithetical to carrying out state policy that we've been charged with carrying out? I mean, we're almost in a no-win situation here. We're at the mercy of the foot draggers, and yet we're being held accountable by our government, rightfully so. Help me out, technical staff management.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chair. Drew McAuliffe on behalf of staff. So, I guess to get to your question, Commissioner O'Donnell, I mean, it's not something that we've kind of raised any red flags about. It's not something that we've been tracking specifically to see if there's, kind of overly restrictive permitting processes that are taking, much longer than they should. That is something we can start tracking. But again, to my knowledge, we haven't had any kind of red flags be raised that we've noticed this becoming a huge issue. As you commented on in previous years, a lot of these delays previously were because of, the frozen ground in Maryland, I believe is how you would phrase it, and various other, supply chains and things like that. So if we start noticing a trend that there is, a lot of these delays are because of kind of very esoteric permitting processes that seem restrictive.
Yeah, Mr. McAuliffe, sorry to cut you off. I hear you saying what you're saying, but I also hear embedded in there very strongly, to my ears at least, that these are legitimate complaint processes. These are legitimate permitting processes. Well, the question is not whether or not they're, I mean, you can have a problem with planning and zoning and the comprehensive plan in a local jurisdiction. And you can really have a problem with the comprehensive plan and the planning and zoning in a local jurisdiction. And one is legitimate and the other is a deleterious delaying tactic that doesn't serve the public interest. And And you say, well, we're not looking at it. We haven't seen any red flags, but I'm certainly putting one up in the air right now.
Mr. Chairman?
Wait, are you finished, Tony? Or
Well, I'm waiting for a response.
so?
I apologize. I'm not sure if I kind of got the question.
So what are you going to do about this going forward? How about that? Is that simple enough for you?
Sure, we could, like I said, we could start tracking it. I just, that may be a better question for one of our attorneys, whether we have, what kind of jurisdiction we have over a local permitting process and things like that. That's not
I'm
something.
not asking that. I know what jurisdiction we have and don't have. We have de minimis, but we do have preemptive siting authority. And we want to give due deference. The statute says we have to give weight. They didn't get the law that took away our preemptive siting authority, but they did get language that said we had to give due weight to their processes, and we do. We're very deferential, maybe to the point where we're letting some of these folks slow down the implementation of some of our stuff, like this particular project. And I just, somebody needs to be saying, hang on here. Let's hold this up to the light and look at it a little closer. Could staff do that going forward, please?
Sure. Yes.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm done.
Okay, Commissioner Sussman. Actually, we can't hear you.
You're muted.
Yeah, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I have to.
All right,
have
now
to-
we're good.
to
So
take
we can hear you now.
this process. Okay,
Mhm.
so I'm going to add to the burdens of staff and go perhaps even a little bit broader. I think given the direction from the legislature that we need to deploy more renewable resources and more solar, I think we need to figure out the places where we're seeing barriers to deployment, whether that is local bodies that are putting up barriers or other places where we're seeing barriers, and so focusing on this and understanding that it took a year and a half for the resolution of this issue, which is probably a bit longer than should have occurred. I'm sort of wondering if there are ways that we can sort of outline processes, be clearer about requirements, working with the local bodies to understand what their concerns are, to put that into a clearer process for all sides, so that we're not necessarily saying, you local body, you're a problem here, but instead, you local body, what's your issue? What is it that you're not receiving from the project? And let's get that information to you when you need it, and not have a sort of a lack of clarity among processes. And maybe we can help to streamline it that way so that we can get these projects built. No one feels like they're being run over, but instead people are being heard, and we put pen to paper so that we can make the process clearer for all sides.
Commissioner Barbe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me make an observation that I think relates somewhat to Commissioner O'Donnell's concern here. Since I've become a member of the Public Service Commission, I have been informally keeping a list of foot draggers' greatest hits. And I have observed, ironically, that some of the jurisdictions that are the worst in this sense are the very same jurisdictions that pride themselves on being liberal, progressive, democratic environmentalists. Montgomery County, my county, being very, very much at the top of the list. And so I don't know if it's really appropriate for our staff to be keeping a hits list as I am, but it's certainly a little pet project that I've cultivated, and I think it's important for people to understand, as I think has often been said in the past, that if you want an omelet, you're going to have to break an eggshell. You can't object to breaking the eggshell if you really want an omelet. And so I feel a great deal of sympathy for any legal responsible business that is forced into slow motion for, what was this, a year and a half, I believe. It doesn't benefit anybody, and I think Commissioner O'Donnell is very much correct that collectively, as a state, we are driving solar power generators out of the state, and we are collectively, whether intentionally or not, thwarting the legislative mandate of the government in Annapolis. And so I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Richard, do you have any? No. Okay. Commissioner O'Donnell, do you still have a question, or?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add on to say that when these AM items are brought up for a brief synopsis discussion, at least introduced, a little bit more than, we put our reasons in the written comments be given. It doesn't tell the people who are observing these meetings, if anybody. I'm sure they're throngs, hordes of millions watching these proceedings on YouTube, but for anybody who is listening and who does have an interest in these matters, it doesn't really tell them anything unless they've actually accessed the written materials and reviewed it. We get it handed to us, so we kind of, we got it. But so I would ask the staff additionally, maybe to put a little meat on the bones when you introduce these things.
So let me ask a question, and it can go to either side of the room. It strikes me from what I've observed since I've been sitting up here is that a number of these projects do get sort of gummed up by the National Capital Park and Planning Commission. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is there sort of a systematic thing with dealing with them? In which case, do we need to have some conversation with them about their process, their review, and things like that? Or are these sort of just coincidental?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the most recent, and I can recall what you're speaking about, they were somewhat unique and not related, I would say. I think it is a little bit more coincidental. Okay. Having said that, I think that these projects, especially under 2 megawatts and below, are at the mercy of these local jurisdictions, and the projects are just working as quickly as they can to get through that. But to answer your question, I believe it's more of a coincidence for these last two issues.
All right. So, is there a regular person or office at the Park and Planning Commission that you always go to, or is it kind of varies depending upon where the project is and stuff like that?
So once we determine the project falls under that jurisdiction, we file, and they assign us a reviewer, and it does vary. Over this last year and a half of working with them, we've had a couple people, and the only piece that I would say that really gummed us up, aside from the legal matter that we were working through, is the comments come in piecemeal. So we've asked if they could review the whole package and give us a list of comments we can respond to, as opposed to responding to 5 and getting 5 more. That's the only thing I could think of that might facilitate expedition.
And for staff, do you have any regular interaction with the Park and Planning Commission, or are they just sort of part of the deal?
No, we review the comments and that's it.
Okay, all right. Well,
I would think, Mr. Chairman, that once these things are flagged, if they do get flagged, that the commissioner itself, maybe through you or a designee, let the permitting entity know of our interest, and that we're kind of like want to get some answers on this stuff.
Sure.
That may be enough oftentimes to prod an administrative agency or permitting body to move things along, because they know they're just not putting it in their desk drawer and letting it sit for a little bit and cook. So
Commissioner
just
Suchman. Commissioner Suchman.
Yeah, so my understanding is we are having a proceeding on December 15th. I've been told. So I don't know the scope of it, but it does deal with utility solar siting. So I mean, it seems to me that the more that we can identify any impediments to getting a CPCN, we need to know that.
Sure.
And so, to the extent that folks listening see that the hearing then as an opportunity to present to us challenges that they've experienced and suggestions on ways to make the process work better, I'm inviting you to do that, so that this is one issue, but if there are other issues that seem to suggest a pattern, it would be really useful for you to present that and to offer suggestions on ways to address that.
Yeah, and just to follow up, I mean, this is a proceeding that we have established to sort of examine the CPCN process related to utility scale solar projects. And I guess we'll make it a point to reach out to the Park and Planning Commission and invite somebody from that entity to participate, so we can get a sense of sort of how their process works. And if there's, I mean, the goal behind this is to try to, as was alluded to by Commissioner O'Donnell and Commissioner Barve and Commissioner Suchman, to try and figure out a way to try and streamline this process. And if we got to, change the law, then, that's what we'll do. But we at least want to get all the issues on the table and find out, where are the problems. And so I guess inviting Park and Planning Commission to be a participant. We've extended an invitation to the other local governments that aren't part of the Park and Planning Commission's area to participate. So we'll add
Mr.
them.
Chairman, may I suggest that Park and Planning is a very unique entity in Maryland law. It's a bi-county agency that was formed at the beginning of the 20th century because the farmers and business people of Montgomery and Prince George's County were tired of having their zoning needs ignored by the government in Annapolis, and they created this bi-county agency. And any law, basically they are run as though they are two separate agencies in practice, a Montgomery County Park and Planning and a Prince George's County Park and Planning. But any attempt to alter the law specifically only for Park and Planning actually has to go through a very tortuous legislative process of going through both the House and Senate delegations of both counties. It's a quadricameral governing system that makes the government of the Austro-Hungarian Empire look simple in comparison. And so I think it's important to invite representatives from both Montgomery and Prince George's counties as well.
Okay, well, we will do that. So, the matter of hand, I move that we grant Distributed Solar Operations LLC the requested waiver and extend the operational deadline for its solar project from December 1, 2023 to April 1, 2025. Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barve.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item on the agenda is from Potomac Electric Power Company. It's comments and requests to amend order number 89664 in case number 9619.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. DeAndre Wilson on behalf of engineering staff. Pursuant to the Energy Storage Pilot Program Act, the Commission, in order number 89240 in case 9619, established the Energy Storage Pilot Program. Accordingly, PEPCO filed a joint application with the Commission for approval of its Livingston Road Energy Storage Pilot Project formerly known as the National Harbor. On November 6, 2020, the Commission issued Order Number 89664 approving the project, subject to the general conditions specified in the order. Since that time, PEPCO has filed 3 requests for extension of the operational start date, which is currently June 30th of 2024. PEPCO's filing requests the Commission to amend Order Number 89664 to reject its Livingston Road Energy Storage Project, as the company no longer supports its inclusion in the Energy Storage Pilot Program due to it not being in the public's interest, as the project would no longer defer a $10.2 million distribution upgrade need for a new substation, resulting in a significant impact on the project's benefit-cost ratio, which staff now calculates to be in the range of 0.79 to 0.48. Therefore, staff agrees with PHI's determination that Livingston Road Energy Storage Project should be removed from the 9619 Energy Storage Pilot Program. PEPCO states that this will allow it to propose a replacement project for the pilot program. If the Commission were to grant the company's request, the total stranded cost for the project, including costs associated with engineering design that has been completed and permit applications, is approximately $4.1 million, or 30% of the total project budget. In conclusion, pursuant to Public Utilities Article 7-216H4, staff recommends the Commission amend Order Number 89664 to reject PEPCO's Livingston Road Energy Storage Pilot Project as not being in the public's interest, and allow PEPCO to file an alternative storage project for submission into Maryland's Energy Storage Pilot Program. Staff would like to note that comments were also filed by members of the County Council of Prince George's County and by the Office of People's Counsel. Thank you.
So, any questions for staff? Oh, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, well, let me hang on. Let me hold on to my thought, and maybe we'll come around to it. Let me just wait until
Okay.
other parties have a chance to.
Okay, so Office of People's Counsel.
Good morning, Natalie Novak from the Maryland Office of People's Counsel. The Commission should conditionally grant PEPCO's request to withdraw its Livingston Road project as no longer being in the public interest. In granting this request, the Commission should require PEPCO to provide a full accounting of the costs associated with every component of the Livingston Road project. And this would include a line item accounting of all of the costs already incurred by the company, as well as any future costs that the company estimates that it might incur should the Livingston Road project no longer be included in the Energy Storage Pilot Program. The Commission should also order PEPCO to explain why the company decided to hire a new contractor after it terminated AJ Mensa, explain its initial distribution deferral calculation and how it accounted for the Gaylord Hotel's microgrid generator, and the company should develop and submit a plan of how it will attempt to reuse or sell the equipment obtained for the Livingston Road project. Finally, the Commission should require PEPCO to fully cooperate with any discovery requests issued by OPC or staff in response to this information. This information should be submitted by November 21st, 2023. This information is necessary to allow OPC to undertake a review of the prudency of the Livingston Road project, PEPCO's management of it, and the associated stranded costs. There have been significant issues with PEPCO's contractor, AJ Mensa, several deadline extensions, and costs have risen exponentially from 4.6 to 13.87 million. And the original deferral value of the project is unclear. The current BCA provided by PEPCO of 0.8 does not even include the loss of the substation deferral benefit of 10.2 million. Overall, there has been a lack of forthcomingness regarding when PEPCO was aware of the loss of the deferral value, what legal avenues or other attempts PEPCO is making to recover from AJ Mensa, and any efforts to reuse or sell the Livingston Road equipment. This information would also be helpful in reviewing PEPCO's newly filed request for a new storage project to be included in the pilot program. Thank you very much, and OPC is available for questions.
Mr. Chairman?
You have a question for her? You want to wait for the company?
Oh, I'll wait for the company, pardon me.
Okay, so why don't we hear from PEPCO?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Matthew Seegers appearing for PEPCO. Let me begin by saying that I very much regret the circumstances under which I'm appearing before you today. This was not an easy decision for the company to make. That being said, for the reasons that are detailed in our filing, the company has determined that the Livingston Road battery project is no longer in our customers' best interests. And so that is why we are here today asking to be relieved of our statutory obligation to complete this project. The company appreciates staff's analysis in its buck sheet, and the only thing that we would like to add, as OPC just indicated, is that we have in fact submitted an alternative project that was filed on October the 17th, and that is currently pending before the Commission. We're also pleased that OPC, they support our filing to reject the project. But regarding the various recommendations that OPC makes in its comments regarding the prudence and cost recovery associated with the project, we currently have an MYP that is also pending before this Commission, in which those issues are being the subject of discovery. And it is there where any such concerns should be addressed. Just to reiterate and to be clear, the company is only seeking that this Commission relieve it of the statutory obligation to complete this project. We are not asking for any kind of a determination regarding the prudence or cost recovery associated with this project. So with that, I am available for questions. I also have several subject matter experts in attendance who can also answer any questions that I am not able to.
So, questions around the Commission. Commissioner Barbee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to confirm this, there was no local government or local community opposition to this project, correct?
That is actually not correct, Your Honor. There have been, there's been significant outreach to the community, and they did express some concerns, and their concerns essentially focused on two issues. One was the risk of a fire, just given all of the events that have happened throughout the country with the battery storage projects, and the second issue was the proximity of the battery at our Livingston Road substation, which is relatively close to residential homes. We worked extensively with the community to try and address their concerns, but yes, there was opposition in the community, and that was one of the factors that led us to determine that this was not in our company, in our customers' best interest.
So what was the battery chemistry? Lithium ion? Or
Yes, that's correct. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That answers my questions.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question is this. Why should we allow the prudency review? And this really gets to, I think, something that's been gnawing at Commissioner Suchman, and I share some of the sentiment. Why should we allow the prudency review of this discrete item that's part of a pilot slip into a huge multi-$100 million rate case when we could take a look at the prudency right now? One, we know it's not used. We know it's not useful. We know our ratepayer is going to be asked to foot the bill for the management decisions that were made on this. And I think we're trying to point you in the right direction, even though we don't give advisories. And I'm not sure you heard us, company. I'm not sure about that. I don't know, but why shouldn't we just make a prudency determination now on something discrete, something definable, something that's not going to get lost in a multi-hundreds of millions of dollar rate case? Why not? I guess staff can take a crack at it.
Michael Dean, on behalf of staff. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. In answer to your question, typically when individual issues of prudency come up, it's normally regarded as single issue rate making and deferred to a rate case, especially if there's a rate case that's been filed. I guess that doesn't address whether or not the rate case can cover the issue of the prudence of this expenditure. But I think the rate case is early in its discovery phases, so it could probably incorporate that into the rate case.
So, Mr. Dean, I'm not necessarily buying what you're selling, because this is not just an issue that's come up kind of on our own. We didn't bring this forward. It's not sua sponte. It's something that we are reviewing as part of and asking to change a pilot that we've generally approved, but we haven't approved the expenditures on it. So I might have a little bit of disagreement with either staff, council, or OGC that this would be single issue rate making. My own personal view is it's in the public interest, and that's the standard that is my lodestar, is in the public interest to determine that we're spending money on pilots that make sense and not just shoving it onto the ratepayers when they ain't getting anything for it. They're not getting anything used. They're not getting anything useful. They're not getting any information. They're just getting a bill. And I'm having a problem with that, and I'm not sure it's single issue rate making because it's part of the storage pilot project. So I know that's your kind of tendon response to the hammer that hit your knee, but I'm just not quite there. I may have a difference with the legal evils on this.
If I could add on, Commissioner O'Donnell, ordinarily the commission makes its prudence determinations in the context of a rate case, and that's because...
Sir, I've been here a while. This isn't my second day on the job.
Understood, Your Honor. But
so I appreciate your instructing me on where things are normally done, but I just laid out why I don't think that's so, and you're saying I'm going to school him and tell him, nah, that's so. That's not responsive to what I'm asking. It's not, Mr. Pepko. It's not.
Commissioner Sushman. You're still.
You're muted, Commissioner.
You have to.
I know, I have to.
Okay.
Okay, so, Pepco Council, can you explain to me what you did, for that $4.1 million that has been spent? Because I understand that not any of that can be used for the new project, so I'm assuming it's not hardware. Can you explain to me what you did that cost $4.1 million?
Sure, and I can bring up my subject matter expert who is more familiar with the finer details of the project. What I do know is that there were costs associated with the permitting for this, and we did procure the switchgear and transformers, which had to be specially manufactured for this because it's going into a substation. And we did also procure the batteries. So that, I believe, represents a large chunk of that expense, but I can bring up my subject matter expert just in case I missed anything, Your Honor.
Okay, and then I hope the subject matter expert can explain why none of those items can be used for the new project or for any project. I mean, if it's stranded, that means it can't be used.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. In terms of using,
Actually,
my name is Stephen.
State your name for the record, just so we got it. So.
Good morning. I apologize for that. My name is Stephen Omodronfo with PEPCO. So in terms of the materials that we have, they were specifically bought for these projects. So we had the switch gears, we had the switchboard, we had the transformers. Sounds like a plug and play material where you could just use for different projects. In terms of the batteries, we had made significant payments for those, and it was still reviewed to see how we can apply them to other projects. At this point, we've not determined what projects we can apply them to, but we can't say they're going to be transferable to other projects moving forward. But that's still something we're looking on being under review.
Okay, so 4.1 million may be the stranded cost number, but it may be something else.
A huge part of that was based on material, but we also had for payment for engineering design. We did on the permitting to have some of those funds used.
No, I understand, but I'm still trying to get a number. I mean, do you have an actual stranded cost number?
We do, but unfortunately I don't have that here with me.
What's the number?
4.1 million.
That is stranded. So you have other materials that are not included in that 4.1 million that you will be able to use for some project.
No, so the 4.1 million consists of the materials that we already purchased.
Yeah, I guess I'm still not understanding, but I guess if you can bring your counsel back up, have you in the MYP sought recovery for the costs that you have incurred in the project that is now canceled?
Your Honor, our MYP was, when it was filed back in May, it did include this project. If this project is rejected, I think it'd be reasonable to pull out the costs associated with that project, just considering the fact that it would not be going into rate base.
Okay, so that I understand, now that the project is canceled, the question is whether you can sort of move forward with the new project. Now that we know the project is canceled, this $4.1 million in stranded costs, are you going to be seeking cost recovery for that?
We not in the pending MYP, Your Honor. No.
That's not answering the question.
That's not answering my question.
Your Honor, in terms of the rates that we have in effect right now, those are already in effect. So whatever costs we have incurred are already included in our rates. So we don't see any change to the rates that are currently in effect. And in terms of the MYP, well, that's currently pending before the commission. As I said before, we would pull out this project from the MYP.
Okay,
If that
so
answers
now
your
I'm
question,
not
John.
clear. You are telling me that you've already recovered the stranded costs for this project?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so if we were to disallow the 4.1 million now, what you're saying is that's not going to mean anything because you're not seeking cost recovery for that?
No, Your Honor. We're not at this time. We're not seeking the $4.1 million from customers.
Is the plan to seek at some other point?
I mean, the company hasn't determined how we're going to proceed with this, but as of right now, we have rates that are in effect that do not include the $4.1 million.
Okay, so you haven't sought it yet. You're not seeking it in MYP, and you haven't made a decision about whether you're going to seek it at some point in the future. Is that what you're telling me?
Essentially, yes, Your Honor.
Okay. That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman,
Actually, let me ask Commissioner Richard if he's got any questions, then I'll come back to you, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Seeger, just so I understand, so there's nothing in the MYP. Do you have any objections at this point to the information that OPC is requesting?
I don't believe we have any objections, Your Honor. It's that in which proceeding is it going to be? It's that
We're asking for it for today. For you want to cancel the pilot.
correct.
Okay. And so they would like to have an accounting for what has happened up to this point. That's what I'm hearing OPC.
Yes.
So you have no objection to that.
We have no objection to it. I guess what my question is that in the terms of this specific proceeding, what would be the need for that accounting?
You want to cancel your project, okay? And it's very troubling. I mean, a lot of the points raised, I mean, I've sat here now for the fourth time, and you're coming back on this
Understood, Your
project.
Honor.
So, and I'm glad to hear that the company regrets, that you kind of put the commission and your customers through this. But I guess at what point then would we get a full accounting along the lines with OPC? Because I think the information they're requesting is very important for us to know.
I believe that a full accounting, it could be provided in the rate case, Your Honor.
But you're not asking for it. I just thought you just said you're not asking for it in MYP. So are you getting data requests
Yes, we
from
are.
OPC regarding this, related to this this project, this
Yes.
This failed storage project?
Yes, we are, Your Honor.
Okay, so you are requesting. Okay, and maybe in a second, OPC, I'd like to understand then the different, what you want today. Well, why don't you go ahead? Just on this particular point, maybe you could help me. Are the data requests for the MYP the same as what you're requesting today for again an accounting of where we are at this point in time?
Commission, I do not have that information, the answer to that question. I'm going to briefly check to see.
Okay, but I guess maybe that. Go ahead.
But I will, but before I defer to my colleague who might have some more specific information for you, I will say that it is important to provide that, provide the information that OPC has requested in this case for all of the reasons already stated, that we are, it is troubling that Pepco wants to cancel this project now several years into it. They made representations that it was cost effective. Throughout this point, we need to understand what Pepco knew at those points when they were making those representations, and also this information is important to review in regard to Pepco's application for the next pilot project. So-
Okay, and just since we were talking about this just last March, it appears since that time we went from again costs expended, stranded costs, whatever we want to call them, from 3.3 million to 4.1 million. Do you have a sense from the company what was spent in this period of time, or is that part of what your request is today?
That's exactly what our request is today. We have these lump sum numbers, but we don't have those numbers aren't associated with like a time frame.
Okay, all right, Mr. Oslander, you were going to add to, for understanding the information
Sure.
that you're requesting at MYP, and then what you're.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Jacob Auslander on behalf of the Maryland Office of People's Counsel. We are serving discovery in the Pepco Multi-Year Rate Plan 2 that covers a number of investments and projects, including this one. I think I'm sitting here in the audience today. I think I'm confused as to exactly what Pepco is doing as far as the cost recovery with this item. To the extent that it is going to be sought within the Pepco multi-year rate plan, I'm confident that the discovery that we're taking will put us in a position to be able to respond to that and make recommendations. To the extent that it's not, which I think is the representations that I heard this morning, then I think that the information that we are requesting in our the letter that we filed on this item is important and should be provided.
Okay, thank you. Maybe the company, so I guess the final, what would then the harm be of, do you feel to the company if we ask and provide the information that OPC is requesting today, and it's also, something that's being requested in MYP data request?
I guess, Your Honor, is that if it's provided in the context of this proceeding, how would that play into any kind of a prudence determination?
Well, I think today, aren't we trying to understand, get the full picture of this failed project? I mean, that's my understanding of what we want to do today. Is that correct?
My understanding of what we are asking is...
Well, we're not asking, but all that's, I think that we're just trying to understand, do you understand what OPC is asking for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and not to sound like a broken record, but we are not asking for any kind of a prudence determination or a cost recovery determination from the commission today. The information that OPC is asking for, really the only use for that information is to make a prudence determination or a cost recovery. And I don't believe this proceeding is the place to do that.
Okay. This is a pilot, is that correct?
Correct.
So aren't we also trying to learn from this experience? So
yes.
Again, I guess I feel like I'm just going in circles with you. It seems like this is important information that we gather now, since you are terminating this project. So it sounds like you haven't really, at least you haven't provided anything at this point for me that would, indicate that it would harm the company, or that there's some good reason for not giving OPC this information.
Other than what I've already said, Commissioner, I don't believe so.
I just feel like you're conflating this with, the pilot with the MYP. So I guess the last question I have is, you're doing a new filing. Have you stopped spending ratepayer money on this project? Are there, as you submit this new project, are you intending, is it the company intention to want to continue to spend ratepayer money on this storage project with your request to file a new project?
No, Your Honor. We have stopped spending on this project.
Okay, so good. I just wanted to, at least for me, I want to make sure we're not throwing any more good money
Your
after
Honor.
bad. Okay. I believe that's all. And yes, Mr. Chair, just to let you know, I fully support making sure that OPC gets the information they're requesting.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I got a question for staff. Is there anything that's going to be harmed or we're going to run afoul of from a time constraint perspective if we don't do this today?
While there are deadlines in the storage project as far as getting things done and reporting them to the General Assembly,
yeah, we've blown through most of them by now.
Well, I don't foresee anything significant. If I may address one previously matter in regards to the discovery requested by OPC in this.
Hang on. Let me ask my questions, and then instead of having you change the channel on me, let me stay on the same channel for a little bit. Is that okay?
Of course, Your Honor.
Thank you. So, Mr. Sears, with all due respect, I find you're bowling me over. You just got done saying again, after you and I have had a colloquy, that you don't agree that this is the place to view prudency. And knowing that I think differently, that's fine. And you can disagree with me all you want, but fact of the matter is, I would think you're trying to add to your vote tally, not make it questionable. So I don't understand the company's tactic here, other than I find it to be evasive and circular, and I got some real confusion, much like OPC, on where's cost recovery at, what's been recovered, where's it going, where's it gonna go. I have no idea at this point, because you've talked me in circles here. And I want to slow this train down, Mr. Chairman, if it's possible. That's why I asked the predicate question. Let's give them 8 weeks or so to get their act together and present something cogent to us, because this is a mess right now. And this is not something new with this particular project site. It's been on, it's been off, it's been up, it's been down, it's been kicked around, it's been pulled and taffied, and good Lord, it's been cost effective, and it's not been. I don't even know what to make of this mess at this point, other than you spent money, you're not using it, and I want to know who's going to foot the bill for that. My own opinion, and I'm developing, unless you're able to dissuade me with non-circular arguments, is invasive arguments, is that the management of the company needs to pay for it, not the ratepayers, because it's your managerial discretion that kind of didn't make this used and useful. I'll just be kind. Mr. Chairman, I'd like everybody to ask their questions and all that, but if it's possible, I'd like to put a hold on this for about 8 weeks or so until the company can get its act together with regard to its presentation and everybody gets on the same page of music here, because right now I'm very confused about where cost recovery lies, where anything that's is able to be sold, that's been invested in, how that comes back in. Are we still going to be collecting money on the 4.1 million after we've scavenged and sold off other parts to get revenues? I don't know where any of this is, and I need some answers. I need someone to like sharpen their pencils and darken their green eye shades to give me some confidence that we're making the right decision here with full information and not evasive information.
Commissioner Suchman.
So, wondering if we're getting caught up in prudency, sort of prudency in terms of rate making, as opposed to prudency, so like maybe big P and little p being prudency in doing this pilot, because it seems to me that and I think Pepco, you seem to suggest as well, that you have not been exactly prudent in how you've been conducting this pilot, and so it seems to me to get the information that we need, sort of following up on Commissioner Richards' line of questioning. This is a pilot, and we need the information, and we clearly, the information we have so far is that Pepco, you haven't done a very good job at deploying a storage facility, and so it seems to me that the information that OPC is asking is really important, not just to understand where you failed in the first pilot, but also to make sure that you succeed, because it's important for you to succeed, for yourself, for your company, and for ratepayers to succeed in the subsequent storage project. So at a minimum, we as the commission, OPC needs, and we need the information to understand where the failures were. And it's not and we're not dealing with cost recovery, because I'm Pepco, I'm taking you at your word. You're not asking for cost recovery now, and if you ask for it, I can say personally, from my perspective, I would say no cost recovery. But we need to understand where the failures were, and we also need to follow closely on how you're executing the new pilot, on the new storage project. So I would recommend that we have that we also require fairly regular updates about where you are in terms of meeting whatever statutory obligations you have. So I think we need to go a little bit further than what OPC is asking. But at a minimum, you should be providing that information, and not because we're trying to look to see whether the costs were prudently expended, and whether $4.1 million of stranded costs is prudent. We need to understand where you failed, why you failed, and we need to get that information to make sure that you succeed in the new project.
Commissioner
That's
Sletch,
the one.
if I may offer a suggestion, we are already under a mandate to provide status reports every 6 months on every project that is not yet operational.
Yeah, I mean, given what has happened in the past, we need to have status reports in a greater frequency than every 6 months, because clearly that didn't work in terms of this project. I mean, I think you need to recognize that spending $4.1 million that will not serve the ratepayers at all is a lot of money, and something went seriously wrong with this, and we need to make sure that doesn't happen in the new project. So I mean, I would recommend that we monitor a little bit more closely what you're doing, but at a minimum, we need to understand what happened, and everything that OPC is asking from you is what you need to provide, because we need to make sure that you're doing what you need to do to deploy storage.
Commissioner Barve.
Thank you. I'm curious to know how long it's going to take for you to develop and file your alternative storage project.
It already is on file, Commissioner. That was filed in October 17th.
Oh, thank you. Didn't know that.
All right, so let me ask this question then. Is it your view that you can't go forward with the new proposal until we officially pull the plug on this one?
That's correct, Your Honor. What the statute lays out is that we bring our initial proposal to the commission. The commission can either accept, modify, or reject that. But it's not it's not unless the commission rejects the first proposal that we can come back with a second proposal.
All right, well, I think you kind of gathered from the folks here on the commission that, we got a lot of questions about this thing. This thing has had, sort of a tortured history at best. And I guess my concern is that, the pilot program has now been, at the request of the legislature, made a permanent situation. So we're no longer having a pilot for energy storage. We're now going to have a program for energy storage. And it strikes me that there's probably a lot of lessons to be learned from what happened here. So how long do you think it's going to take you to get the information that OPC asked for?
If I can have a moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
It'll take us about 4 weeks, Your Honor. I know that the holidays are coming up,
Yeah,
so
appreciate it. Sure. Yeah.
we would ask maybe until first week of, let's say second week of January. Would that be sufficient?
Okay, but understand that we're not going to do anything on this item until we see the information about the one you want us to
Understood.
cancel. So with that, I move that we defer this item until the appropriate date in January, and after we've reviewed the information supplied by the company in accordance with the request by Office of People's Counsel.
And I would note, Your Honor, that to the extent that we can get the information in earlier, we will certainly do so.
Okay, well, appreciate that, and we'll consider making, so.
Just a question about your motion. So we are still directing the company to provide
Yeah.
OPC with the information. Okay,
Yep.
good. And I just note that, some of this information I think is particularly important. I mean, especially on the deferral value. I think it was discussed pretty well in the OPC filing, but I think I would certainly want to make sure I understand exactly why that deferral value was not discussed by the company in March of this year, because that disturbs me a lot, that you were still using the old deferral value when it, as OPC points out, it was likely the company may have already known that National Harbor, that microgrid was already extinguished that as a deferral value. So that to me is something that's important that be well discussed in the OPC question. Also, I think the idea that the company needs to have a plan for what it's going to do with this equipment that no longer has any value to this project. So I just wanted, before we go, this is very important, at least for me to understand.
Err on the side of inclusion of information that may be relevant in answering our concerns about this project that you've heard this morning. So with that, Commissioner Sushman,
Aye.
Commissioner Barve,
Aye.
Commissioner Richard,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item on today's agenda is from the Potomac Edison Company. Its default smart inverter settings profile filed under PC 44.
So let me ask a question. So we've got sort of the same subject matter for Potomac Edison, SMECO, Baltimore Gas and Electric, Pepco, and Delmarva. Is there enough differences in the various things that we need to take them individually, or can we take this as a group?
I think we could take them collectively together
Okay.
as a group.
So why don't we, so the various affected entities, why don't you come up to the table? And I know we also have suggestions that were made by the Office of People's Counsel, so we'll so we'll address those too. But this way we can maybe move this along.
Your Honor, I'm not sure if OPC is considered an affected entity, or
Well,
I'm fine to stand here at the
yeah,
podium.
Okay, that's fine. Why don't you do that? So, since we're, or I mean, if there's room in the end, go right ahead. So. Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. DeAndre Wilson on behalf of staff. Pursuant to COMAR 2050-0906-09A, a utility with a total number of 150 or 150,000 or more customers served in Maryland shall file an initial default utility required inverter settings profile with the Commission for approval on or before October 1st of 2023 to be effective by January 1st of 2024. COMAR 2050-0906-J5D states that a utility monitoring and control plan submitted to the Commission pursuant to J3A of this regulation shall include comparison to IEEE's 1547-2018 compliant monitoring and control alternatives, if applicable. IEEE is a standard that provides criteria and requirements for interconnection and interoperability of distributed energy resources with electric power systems at primary and secondary distribution voltage levels. The standard provides smart inverter default settings within a specific range of allowable settings for voltage and frequency trip settings, which allow distributed energy resources to coordinate with the electric distribution system protection and control devices. Smart inverters are equipped with several advanced mode functions that help support grid reliability and stability for grid modernization for both the distribution and bulk power systems, while also helping achieve cost effectiveness by minimizing interconnection costs, enhancing hosting capacity, and deferring the need for distribution system upgrades. Not every advanced mode function is required to be implemented by the utilities in their default smart inverter settings profiles, but COMAR 2050-09-08-05 states that the primary objective of smart inverter profiles shall be to prevent involuntary real power curtailment during normal conditions and limit involuntary real power curtailment during abnormal conditions. The secondary objective shall be to enhance hosting capacity and optimize the voltage regulation capabilities of smart inverters. In accordance with these regulations, BGE, Pepco, Delmarva, Potomac Edison, and Semeco each filed their default smart inverter settings profiles for commission approval. BGE, Pepco, and Delmarva and Potomac Edison have all chosen to utilize what's known as the voltage reactive power mode, or VOLT-VAR for short, while Semeco was the only utility to utilize both voltage reactive power mode, VOLT-VAR, and voltage active power mode, or VOLT-WAT, simultaneously. VOLT-VAR mode controls reactive power output as a function of the distribution system voltage. When activated, the DER will inject reactive power when the voltage drops below the specified minimum voltage and absorb reactive power when the voltage rises above the specified maximum voltage. VOLT-WAT mode controls real power output as a function of the distribution system voltage. When activated, the DER limits the active power it generates as a function of distribution voltage. After its review of the filings, staff recommended the disapproval of both Semeco and PEE's filings. However, after discussions with both Semeco and PE, the companies provided revised filings on November 17th and the 20th, respectively, with updated utility default inverter settings within the range of allowable settings as specified by IEEE 1547-2018. Therefore, staff finds that Semeco and PE's revised utility default smart inverter settings profiles are in compliance with IEEE 1547-2018 and COMAR 2050-09-06. Therefore, staff recommends that the Commission approve Semeco and PE's revised default smart inverter settings filings. In conclusion, pursuant to COMAR 2050-09-06-011, staff recommends the Commission approve the utility default smart inverter settings profiles of BGE, Pepco, Delmarva as filed, and approve the revised filings of Semeco and Potomac Edison. Staff wants to note that comments were also filed by the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, or IREC, and by the Office of People's Counsel. Thank you.
So, questions for staff? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have implemented, I think, at least partially, smart inverter interconnections as part of the PC44 interconnection work group or effort initiative that we had as part of the grid mod. But IEEE 1547 was in somewhat of flux for several years, with a new version promised and never, well, took a long time of promising before it ever arrived at the doorstep. So, needless to say, I'm not sure where things stand with regard to our regs. We had some rulemakings with this, and I don't think we had a lot of detail. So question becomes this for staff, for technical staff. Does anything in these filings affect any regulatory action or rulemaking taken in phases 1 through 4 of small interconnections? Or is there anything in phase 5 of small interconnection rulemaking that we need to take into account because of what's reflected in these filings? And if my question is not clear because it's kind of a run on, let me know and I'll clarify it.
Yes, please, can you clarify your question?
Yep. So does it affect any previous or current pending rulemaking? How's that?
No, these filings today won't affect any previous rulemakings, and it will work.
And why not?
The previous rulemakings were setting the stage for what these filings are. These current filings for the smart inverter
So
profiles in regards to just the interconnection rules and studies that were put in place by the previous rules that were codified.
So just to make sure I understand then, these filings are responsive to a previous rulemaking requirement and fit within the parameters of those rulemaking guidelines. Is that right?
Yes, it's in line with previous rulemakings. The reference to our IEEE 1547 that's existing in Comar now provides space if IEEE were to ever change change its existing standards. Comar specifies that the utilities or these profile settings will have to be updated to any of the most current IEEE standards. So the one that is in existence now, 2018, is the one that these settings are set for. Again, if in the future those should change, then they will be required to update those existing settings to that
Okay,
standard.
and we referenced the date, the effective date, and the version of that particular IEEE 1547 in the current regulatory structure that we have,
Yes.
so that we know which one we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for staff? So is there anyone here from IREC? Well, so,
John Borkowski, I'm the work leader of the interconnection work group, and IREC could not be here today, but we really do appreciate their filings. They're very helpful, and accordingly, I think staff's filing echoes some of the IREC recommendations.
okay, so that case, go ahead.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Jacob Auslander on behalf of the Maryland Office of People's Counsel. We filed a letter yesterday supporting staff's recommendations, and as Mr. Wilson went over, since the staff buck sheet was filed, both SMECO and PE have come in with revised settings profiles that address the concerns that staff raised, so we're in full agreement with staff. We also, though, agree with many of the comments that IREC raised and the comments that they filed in regards to these settings profiles. And our OPC's understanding is that the settings that are being established today are not going to be set in stone, and they're going to be subject to modification in the future. And we do think that it's important for that process to continue. I think that you'll probably hear from utility representatives today that will agree with the notion that this is a learning process and that the capabilities of these smart inverters are going to be developed over time. And I think that the work that the interconnection work group is continuing to do will benefit from the ability that these smart inverters will provide, and the work that the distribution system planning work group is working on will also be impacted by the capabilities that these smart inverters will provide. And with that, I'm open for any
Just so I understand, though, I mean, because you made in the written comments, there were like specific recommendations that you made. I mean, are you wanting us to do that in light of these revised filings? Or?
So we do support IREC's a request that all of the utilities activate the volt-watt setting, which only SMECO, I believe, has done so far. We also, though, understand that this is a process that's in development. So I don't know at this stage, and perhaps some folks at the table will be able to answer how many smart inverters with these functionalities are currently on each of the systems. My understanding is that that number might not be as high as it will be in the short, medium-term future. I think as these smart inverters begin to be deployed more widely, I think the benefits of enabling the features that the smart inverters are capable of performing increase. So were the commission to approve the settings profiles as filed today and as recommended by staff, OPC would have no objection. With the caveat that as this process continues to be developed and as these settings profiles are reconsidered at a future date, we may specifically ask for these functions to be enabled and perhaps even recommend specific, more granular detail in regards to the specific profiles.
Okay, so before I turn to the companies, does staff have any thought about OPC's suggestions?
No, we've in our report, in our write-up, we've kind of pointed out what we suggested as possible next steps for the utilities, which included continue working with nationally recognized laboratories to further get a learnings as far as how these different mixed modes, advanced mixed modes that these smart inverters use in order to better enhance their capabilities for the electric grid. So we're pretty much in line with some of those same recommendations or thoughts.
All right, so let me turn to the companies and start at my left and just state who you are and go ahead.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Jessica Raba on behalf of Potomac Edison. I have with me Matthew Rosensteel, our Supervisor of Distribution Planning and Protection, if you have technical questions beyond my capabilities. Just want to start by giving a big thanks to staff for working with us on this matter and getting us to a place and a settings profile that works for PE and meets the requirements of COMAR and IEEE standards. In terms of the additional recommendation that OPC just put forth and that IREC recommended, we're in full agreement with what OPC said. This is a learning process for us. It doesn't make sense for technical reasons for us to include that in our default settings at this time, but we have committed to staff to continue to work with EPRI to make sure we're evolving as the industry evolves. And, while it's a not right now, that doesn't mean it's a not at some point in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Crystal Barnett. Good morning, Chair Hoover and Commissioners. Crystal Barnett on behalf of BGE. With me today is James Mirabili, our Principal Engineer of New Business, and Luke Hasemeyer, our Principal Engineer of Distribution Planning. We've reviewed staff's comments and do not have anything additional to add. The company is available for questions.
Good morning, Chair Hoover, members of the Commission. Damon Krieger on behalf of Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative. I'd like to echo again the comments from PE about the staffs, and really it expands to OPC, IREC. The collaboration here has been very much appreciated. It is an evolving process, to coin a slightly different phrase, in the sense that we are trying to get this to the right point, and that's not going to happen in a first iteration. I think the commission will find as we move forward with RM81, for example, in a few weeks, and talk about evolving the regulations forward to take even more advantage of the technology that's now before us. This is really stage one of that evolution. And so I think, as you heard from staff, we did take into account not only staff's comments, OPC's comments, but IREC's comments as well, to get us to this first draft here for publication. With that, I'm here with our Vice President in charge of engineering, distribution system planning and engineering, and so if you have technical questions, again, beyond my capabilities as well, I'm more than happy to bring him to the table. Thank you.
Pepco.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Matthew Seegers appearing for Pepco and Delmarva Power. We echo the accommodations of staff and being willing to work on this. Concerning the comments that were filed, we have no issue with the collection of data. In fact, for the PHI utilities, we have a smart inverter pilot in which we can go ahead and collect that data. So that's where we would do so. For VoltWatt, I echo the previous comments that this is an evolving process. We're committed to working with the parties on this. So I'm not sure if we're able to do it as of today to implement these, but we have the same comments, Your Honors.
So, questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Schlesman. Wait a minute. You have to unmute. So.
And at some point I will get this right. I just want to applaud the utilities on putting this together. This is really important in deploying DERs. I would note that FERC has directed NERC to develop inverter-based resources standards, and so as you sort of move forward, kind of keep an eye on what NERC is doing. This is a learning process, and I would suggest sort of moving ahead with what's been filed now. Allow the process to go forward and allow the learning to go forward. And again, I want to applaud the utilities for going ahead and putting all of this together. So thank you. That's all I have.
Any other questions from anybody else? Mr. Richard.
Yeah, I also want to join Commissioner Suchman in just thanking the work group and the parties for working together to facilitate getting these DERs onto our distribution system. That's very important to our state policy and what we're trying to do. So I'm glad to see things move forward. I did want to ask a question, though, about this volt-watt settings issue, only in that as part of the filings, it talks about how this could potentially help us avoid expensive upgrades, things like reconductoring and that type of thing. So I understand this is a non-mandatory recommendation at this point, but is this something that's being kept in mind, the possibility of avoiding expensive upgrades later on? Is this something that's in the near term, and hopefully we will be able to get figured out in our state so that, again, we can derive the full benefits of these smart inverters? And I guess maybe I'll start with staff and even our work group leader, Mr. Borkowski, if you have any thought on that.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Richard. John Borkowski from the commission staff, well, not technical staff, but in any case, and I'm also the work group leader, if I didn't say that before, but we had a vigorous debate about volt-watt in the interconnection work group. I mean, there are definite benefits to volt-watt. I will say that there's trade-offs too. The benefit of volt-watt is basically it allows you to improve hosting capacity, but that can come at the expense of DER curtailments, because what volt-watt does is when you get to a high voltage level, it'll actually curtail the DERs. So the debate within the work group was factored on many DER industry stakeholders did not necessarily support Volt-Watt. In fact, in the original iteration, when we were discussing, regulations and moving forward with smart inverters, many of the utilities initially indicated that they were looking at implementing Volt-Watt, but I think they took that feedback from the DER industry and basically may have moved back to just the Volt-Var, with only Schmecco going forward with the Volt-Watt. In fact, some of the DER industry stakeholders are so wary of Volt-Watt, and they point to California as being an example where you get high DER penetrations, and they have a curtailment problem with Volt-Watt in California, and they put into place some pretty extensive reporting requirements on DER curtailments, and they're trying to get a handle on Volt-Watt. So I think that while we recognized in the work group that there were benefits to Volt-Watt, we also recognized that there were trade-offs, and I think that this is a good first start. I would characterize it as don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Let's start out, get our smart inverter standard up and running in the state, achieve those benefits, which are many. I mean, there are many benefits, notwithstanding improved hosting capacity to getting smart inverters started in the state. But let the work group monitor over time and basically adjust and refine the approach as we go along.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I do thank you for leading the work group in a due and deliberative process, and we certainly want to do this correctly. But again, whenever I see, IREC, which is deemed, I think, as the DER authority and has extensive expertise and also is working across the state. So I hope we can, again, make sure that we're getting all the learnings and getting all the best benefits we can from smart inverters. So again, I appreciate all the parties working together on this. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, any other, Commissioner O'Donnell. So. Actually, I think you might be on mute, Commissioner O'Donnell, because I'm not hearing you.
I had the Commissioner Suchman issue.
Okay.
Mr. Borkowski, what is your status now? You're speaking to us today. Do you have two hats on? Are you an advisor to the commission, a senior advisor on the management floor of the commission, or are you some other hat on? I don't even know what it would be at this point. So,
well, thanks.
Help me out with that.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell, for that question. Yes, I am a commission advisor. I am also the work group leader. I'm not making an advocacy view here, though. I'm just supplying information because I am the work group leader that, I think would be helpful as background.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because I knew that our Office of General Counsel was probably fidgeting in his chair there a little bit, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't hearing advocacy because
right.
If I learned anything from Bob, it's you can't do both, and he's had a particular bee in his bonnet about that stuff over the years, and it's rightfully so. So I just wanted to clarify where we were with that. Thank you.
So, any other questions? All right, so let me, just so I get this right, if we make a motion to approve the default DU-URP setting profiles for BG&E, Pepco, Delmarva, Potomac Edison, and Smecco, that will accomplish what we need to accomplish, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's the motion I make. Commissioner Sussman.
Aye.
Mr. Barbe.
Aye.
Mr. Richard.
I just want clarification. That also includes the data collection. Is that correct? Is that part of the motion? that was requested by IREC? Was that in your?
Staff mentions it as next steps.
Yeah.
Some have expressed some concern as to how that may go about, but staff is open to discussing with them how to move forward with that. There are some existing reporting requirements for volt watt curtailments and complaints in regards to the monitoring of that particular mode already existing in Comar. But some of the utilities have already expressed that they can provide that information, reporting information.
Okay, I just wanted to make note that that was a specific IREC request, and so I'm satisfied that that's encompassed. in
And
there.
it's my understanding that these issues will be taken up by the work group going forward.
Okay,
so.
no, I'm satisfied with that. Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Chairman, I just would like to say I thought we had that issue of enhanced data reporting laying flat, and I hear it at the 11th hour here that maybe it wasn't. So I'm glad that Commissioner Richard brought up his issue and clarified that, because we need to make sure everybody's on the same page. I don't want someone coming back later saying we didn't commit to that, we had an issue, or there was some concern expressed. Because just now is the first time I heard some concern expressed. So everybody up to this point has said we're on board with this stuff. So I'll vote, but I wanted to register the fact that I support Commissioner Richards' desire to press that issue, because I just don't want him to get bowled over, or any commissioner to get bowled over on their what they say during these proceedings. Aye.
So
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would agree as well. So can we add some language into the order encouraging the parties to work towards a place where we get this information?
Okay, so we'll make that as part of the letter order that be issued later today. So, and with that, I vote aye, and that's the last item on our administrative meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you.